I get it. You've spent hours scrolling through glossy listings, watching those high-performance plasma cutters slice through steel like butter, only to end up with a machine that sputters, cuts unevenly, or refuses to start on a 110V outlet. That gap between the showroom promise and the shop floor reality is why I'm doing this deep dive. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. In the next few minutes I'll walk through the real-world quirks of a mid-range cutter, so you can decide whether the CUT50L non-touch pilot arc air plasma cutter actually earns its price tag or if you'd be better off looking elsewhere. First, let's set the stage for anyone new to plasma cutting. A cutter's job is simple on paper: generate a high-frequency arc, ionize a jet of compressed air, and melt a narrow path through conductive material. In practice, you have to juggle power input, duty cycle, and the quality of the pilot arc to keep the cut clean and consistent. The biggest buyer complaints I keep seeing across forums and YouTube build-up videos are, "It won't start on my 110V household circuit, the pilot arc dies as soon as I touch the metal, and it can't handle anything thicker than a couple of millimeters." Those are the deal breakers that turn a promising purchase into a costly disappointment. Enter the CUT50L. At first glance the specs read like any other inverter-based cutter: a high-frequency non-touch pilot arc, a claim of handling both 110V and 220V inputs, and a construction that's high-quality enough to survive the heat of continuous use. What matters most is how those claims translate when you hook up a 30A air compressor, plug it into a standard wall outlet, and start a real job on a sheet of mild steel. Who should consider buying the CUT50L? If you're a hobbyist or a small shop fabricator who already owns a decent air compressor, around 30-40 CFM at 90 psi, and you need a cutter that can comfortably handle 1 mm to about 6 mm thickness on mild steel, aluminum, or stainless, this unit lands in that sweet spot. The non-touch pilot arc is particularly helpful for thin materials because you don't need to press the nozzle against the workpiece to get the arc started. This reduces the risk of leaving a tiny dimple at the entry point, something many entry-level cutters struggle with. For folks who do occasional repair work on automotive frames or need to trim sheet metal for custom enclosures, the CUT50L's flexibility with voltage, 110V or 220V, means you can run it straight off a standard garage outlet without hunting for a dedicated 220V line. On the flip side, if your workflow revolves around heavy-duty, high-throughput production, think cutting 12mm steel plates on a daily basis, or you need a duty cycle that can sustain 10 minutes on, 2 minutes off for long runs, the CUT50L will feel underpowered. The high-frequency inverter label is great for achieving a stable arc, but the actual output current caps out around 50A, which translates to a practical thickness ceiling near 8mm on mild steel under optimal conditions. Users who demand that kind of depth or who need a machine that can run for hours straight without a cooldown period will likely hit the limits quickly. Now, let's talk about the everyday experience of setting up the cutter. One of the first things I noticed in the unboxing video, something that isn't always obvious from the product page, is the clarity of the wiring diagram. The manual includes a simple plug-and-play guide for both 110V and 220V configurations, which saves you the headache of hunting for the right fuse or breaker. Plugging it into a standard 15A household circuit worked without tripping the breaker, but you do need to keep the air compressor's draw in mind. The combined load can approach the circuit's limit if you're running other tools at the same time. When you fire up the pilot arc, the non-touch feature really shows its value. I ran a test cutting a 2mm steel panel with a 2mm gap between the nozzle and the sheet. The arc ignited cleanly within a second, and the cut started without any nibble or gouge at the entry point. That's a practical win for anyone who needs precise entry marks, like when you're fitting brackets or preparing a clean edge for welding later on. On thicker material, say a 5mm plate, the arc held steady, but you do have to adjust the airflow to its higher setting to keep the cut from overheating. The cutter's built-in regulator lets you dial the flow in increments, which is a nice touch that many lower-priced models lack. A hidden trade-off that shows up once you've used the unit for a few weeks is the heat management. The housing is indeed crafted from high-quality materials and can handle the heat of a typical 15-minute cut, but after about 20 minutes of continuous operation the unit's internal fan ramps up noticeably. It's not a failure mode, but the sound can become a distraction in a small shop, and you'll want to give the machine a few minutes of idle time before jumping back into another cut. That's a